right, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Saturday. The weekend is upon us here. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. 12:27 p.m. here, California time. October 26, 2024 is the date today. Latest activity shows a 2.3 into the California area, where we're seeing a little bit of uptick here go on across the northern edge of the, it's going to be the plate boundary between the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific plate here. Got a little swarm of activity here offshore. The latest quake, though, is 3.6, excuse me, into the area outside of Susanville. It's a little odd area to see some earthquake activity. Looks like a 2.8 earlier this morning as well. Latest one, a 3.6. I believe that has something to do with the increasing pressure out here within this area of the Cascadia subduction zone. And if you look back at the last 7 days of earthquake activity, it's been elevated here across the southern end. Of course, you know, it's a ways away from the plate boundary here, but the strain and stress builds out here across the area away from the plate boundary here. And that's looks like what's going on here today, as we have seen a little bit of earthquake activity in general here across the interior portion of Northern California, with the latest one on the eastern side here of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Again, that's a little odd to see some earthquake activity specifically out here. A little uncertain onto which fault system this three-pointer occurred on, but a 3.6, 2 miles below the surface. I guarantee you they felt this earthquake there around Susanville. Susanville's a prison town, or at least it was. Oh, there was a number of prisons up there. I think they shut one of them down. There's still one remaining prison, if I remember right, High Desert State Prison. Everyone from Susanville, I think, works there. There was an interesting article here a couple years back on that town. So a few folks did report feeling that earthquake, and that is, again, on the eastern side of Sierra Nevada mountains here. Definitely an odd location. One earthquake here outside of Redding from this morning as well, 2.3. So it looks like the strain is quite elevated out here across this area. When you mix in the previous activity here over the last week and the newer activity back building here along the plate boundary, it definitely makes sense here to see some elevated seismic activity here. Tremor last night, let me go double check Tremor and see what that was. I think most of it is down south here in the southern end, if I recall. Yep. Extreme southern end of Tremor. Now, this is activity deeper into the subduction zone. This is not surface activity, but very slow slip vibrational frequencies being picked up by super sensitive equipment down there, 35, 45 kilometers deep into the subduction zone of the Cascadia. So that's what's going on there. It looks like any type of tremor there is stirring up earthquake activity around the southern end here of the Cascadia. So quite the strain going on here across the region in the last week. Today's movement, roughly at about the same time of each other here. Within 10 minutes of each other, we had a 4.2, 3.9, and a 3.5 at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Interesting activity. Looks like we've seen one prior earthquake there outside of Redding before this little sequence of events there off the coast of Northern California. And now we got further activity east here. So definitely watch this region. You know, it looks like things are straining pretty good out there. Further down the area as well, we got south of the Bay Area, we got 2.3 coming in. That's on the Calaveras fault system here. Fairly lengthy fault that branches off the plate boundary, the San Andreas fault here, and extends up towards the Concord area. That's one of the latest quakes there within the last hour. Central portion here of the San Andreas fault, pretty quiet. Southern California, well, we got, you know, pretty good earthquake swarm stirring up out here across Death Valley still. Let's see what we got for a total tally. Wow, 63 earthquakes here, stirring up in a swarm fashion out here across the Death Valley area. Furnace Creek, mainly off of this mountain range here. Let's see what we got for a satellite view. I don't believe this is going to be volcanic. It's definitely stress related to fault systems out here, and it's just another area of Southern California that has been increasing in magnitudes and multitudes of earthquakes out here. You know, over the past couple of months, we've had various locations out here across Southern California, and this here is the latest one in obviously a new area. See what we got so far today in this little sequence of events. That's a pretty healthy number, 30 earthquakes just in the last 24 hours. Mainly microquake, nothing above 2.5. But if we look at the last 7 days, there was a handful of earthquakes in there above the 2.5 threshold. A couple fours in there, some upper fours to be exact. So things are still active out here across the area. A little uncertain, though, on if we're going to see any larger scale activity out here, but in general, that's a sign of strain out here across the plate boundary inland. The migrational pattern here that takes place when things are fairly compacted here, almost to a breaking point, we start noticing these inland swarms. Southern California out here, further south, got a little earthquake here near Villa Park, 1.7 in the last hour. Couple other smaller quakes down here across the San Jacinto fault zone. Nothing major going on here across the San Andreas fault for now, but as always, we'll keep an eye on the West Coast. There's a lot at stake out here in terms of big time earthquake potential. Pacific Northwest, relatively quiet. Nothing going on there Yellowstone, but I am going to double check that here real quick. I always have to, just to make sure that we're not missing any interesting activity out there. This here looks like some type of network interference is what it is. That's not earthquake activity. Looks like we got wind kicking up here as well. There's one or two little earthquakes here. Those are very small, probably 1.0 and below. But this is some type of wind event out there. It is showing up on that station as well as Mary Lake. These are probably open to the elements out there, so it will pick up wind vibration noise over here across the east entrance as well. We'll check that out, the weather, here in a little bit. The rest of the country out here, one earthquake in the Trinidad area of Colorado. Occasionally we get some earthquakes out here. But for now, 3.4 from last night, it looks like, late last night. And as you can see here, the rest of the state's pretty quiet. A lot less activity, I should say, today out here across the area in terms of larger scale potential or larger scale movement. We do have a number of deep earthquakes, though, from Japan all the way down here to the Banda Sea area. Even Java Trench getting in on some deeper activity here. So a multitude of deep quakes all across the area. Back over here across the Fiji and the Tonga Trench area as well. That should set a stage of increasing movement here soon in terms of larger scale activity. So definitely watch that. That's a number of deep quakes here. Not a whole lot of surface adjustment going on yet, but we'll definitely see that kick up here. New Zealand pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on. Main focus right now looks like it's bouncing back and forth here between the area of deeper quakes and the shallow adjustment here across the west coast. Not a whole lot in between there. Alaska fairly quiet, aside from some small microquake activity. We got one earthquake here from yesterday in the 2.5 range across the Cook Inlet. Aside from that, general small microquake activity prevailing today. But goodness, that's a little odd earthquake out here. I guess it's been reviewed. 3.5 reviewed. Let's see what some of these magnitudes are. Yeah, roughly 3.5 is the specific magnitude that a lot of these seismograph stations picked up on. What happens is a number of these seismograph stations send in the earthquake magnitude and location and depth a lot of these have error rates, right? So they're not specifically accurate when it comes to the magnitudes and whatnot, but it spits it out. Hundreds of stations get computed, and then it sends out preliminary magnitude, and then from there, if needed, a seismologist will review it for accuracy and then go from there. But it looks like most of the stations are reporting that as a 3.5 earthquake there across Susanville. And again, it's in a little odd location. I honestly don't recall the last time we've seen anything specifically out there in that area. Quite rare, to say the least. I want to search out there real quick. I know the whole area has got a lot of volcanic activity. Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta area up north. But I just want to see what we've had here in the last couple years. Just specifically that area. So I'm going to go over here to the map and pull up the history for the Susanville area. And it seems like it wants to happen, what the earthquake activity is happening right around there. Let me double check that, make sure. Yeah, just outside of the Susanville region to the north. Wow. Yeah, this is there was a 3.7 back in 2004, but for 2.5 and above, these are the only earthquakes here in the last, well, I put it 2000, so 24 years. This one here is a little bit further south, so nothing in this area except for today's activity. It's quite rare. Interesting. All right, well, we'll definitely keep an eye here on the California area, showing some elevated movement here, north and south out here recently. Las Vegas, a little earthquake northeast here out in the desert. 1.4 earthquake, nothing big, but we'll definitely watch it, folks. All right, space weather activity. Late last night, we had a decent X-flare activity event stirring up. By the way, looks like our CME here from the X 3.3 a couple days ago from this flare, that's the X flare, that was off on the southeastern limb of the sun when it popped off that flare. It looks like we are getting a little glancing blow here. Sometimes it's hard to judge when and if we'll even get anything from those sunspots that are, not Earth directed. But it looks like the auroras are starting to kick up here. Bad timing for the North American area, it looks like. But for the folks there across Europe and Asia area, Iceland, Greenland, getting potential auroras out there right now. Now, whether that extends into tonight or not, we'll have to see. Proton event. We've had a number of X flares recently, so that's bound to happen with the elevated X or the proton event here, mainly affecting the polar regions. This is not the auroras, but the Earth being bombarded with charged protons here from the recent flare activity. That's certain that should linger here for a little bit. But there's our X flares from last night. Looks like it was a double X flare event potentially. Long duration X flare. And this one here, a little bit more Earth directed. So here in another 2 nights or so, we should see maybe a better shot of the auroras here. Just looking at that long duration event there. Let me see. This is from today. Yeah, that's a full halo CME from last night's X flare. So that looks a little bit more promising, right? In terms of a significant impact, kicking up the auroras here as we head into the probably be early next week when we see the arrival from that X flare. Although it's a fast-moving one there, it looks like. Looks like maybe a G1 class storm for October 28th when the CME shown below is predicted to deliver a glancing blow. So we'll have to see how that holds out. Here's tomorrow night's aurora forecast here, so maybe it's arriving a little bit early. Well, last night, tonight, tomorrow night, that would make sense here. That would be about 2 days here of travel time for that CME. So we'll see. We'll check back on that tomorrow sometime, see if we got any further escalation there of the auroras. But it looks like maybe tonight might be a night as well, pending this holds up. All right, so flare threat obviously still somewhat elevated here with the number of sunspots that are currently facing the Earth. A large group here of clustering going on here. Fairly dynamic as well in terms of complexity. Going to have to watch these. These are rotating obviously further into the Earth-directed view and will provide some further X-flare shots here in the days ahead as it's going to be staring right at us pretty soon. And there's a number of sunspots out there that are capable of producing some larger flares. It looks like it was around 3872 to 3873 here. So the west, or the a little bit further out here on the eastern limb, this regional sunspot area is the region of the X-flare activity. Nice intermixing here within that region, so we'll definitely keep an eye on it. These are fairly advanced and complex sunspots there, and they can pop off X-flares with little to no warning. As we've seen here in the last couple days, this X-flare popped up out of the blue. A lot of times you can tell when these flares are gonna, or when these sunspots are about ready to produce a significant flare. You'll follow this stair-stepping ladder event up into the C-flare activity, sometimes even consistently in the M-flare activity, and then it'll pop with an X-flare, but not all the time. Either way, there's definitely been a number here of sunspots since the X-flare last night, or solar flares. Excuse me. Being under the weather, whew, not a good thing. There's a couple M-flares here from this morning, and, well, late last night, early this morning, I should say. Almost a near M-flare as well. So things are quite active out here on the sun. We'll continue to watch that. No big earthquake activity yet to accompany the solar flare and proton events. Definitely keep an eye here on the west coast here, folks. I want to show you guys the windy map and explain here the potential wind that's going on up there across the Wyoming area. Those seismograph stations there that I was showing you guys, the darker blue, thicker lines reading, is not magma movement. It's not fluid movement. It's nothing but the environment out there. A lot of these seismograph stations are exposed to the elements there, and the wind will definitely stir things up out here across the area. Got some wind gusts up around 30 miles per hour, a little bit higher across the eastern area of Yellowstone National Park here in Wyoming. There in Wyoming. I'm not in Wyoming, but I'm out here in Northern California, and that's where we're probably going to get a little bit of rain here coming up. Got some cooler storm systems coming in here, bringing with it chances of rain and snow in the mountains. Looks like Halloween night's going to be a little wet around here. Not super wet, maybe a few sprinkles. Really not expecting a whole lot here in Northern California, but up into the Pacific Northwest, they got a fairly dandy of a storm coming in Halloween night. It looks like that maybe stretches down there for the following day for some rain in Northern California, so I'm definitely appreciative of that. Even Southern California, look at that. Looks like next weekend will be wet down there across the LA area, San Diego region, bringing in some needed rainfall. I'm sure everyone could use some rainfall. That hurricane out there in the Atlantic staying positioned well off the coast of Florida, and that's good news if it continues to trend that way. Wow, look at that storm here deeper into November. That's a pretty powerful low pressure system there, bringing some heavy duty rain out here across the west coast and Southern California. Goodness, hopefully that holds true. That's a big time rainmaker out there. Big time snow in the mountains as well. So I'm hoping this is one model I hope holds true at a distance here. This is 2 weeks away. Anything can change, but I got my fingers crossed that it stays consistent like that. All right, what else we got here? A little spike on the BC spation. Creating some new words here. Goodness. I've been trying I've been trying all the home remedies here, folks. Some lemon and honey tea. I just tried some local honey. Not the store-bought kind, but from the actual beekeepers around here. And I don't know. It seems to be helping a little bit, but there's still just something stuck down there in my throat that's not wanting to come out here. I don't know if I should take a super steamy hot shower to try and loosen it up. The bad thing is with that, I don't want it to turn into ammonia. If you're breathing in all that moisture into your lungs, the warm moisture as well could further amplify things. So it's a little toss up there. I'm not for sure if I want to do that, but it's got to come up. It's just annoying. Solomon Islands, a little bit of earthquake activity there. So I'm going to get going here, folks, before I completely lose my voice. I'll be watching things out here across the earthquake world, and we'll jump in if anything changes out here. But keep an eye, West Coast, quite the active movement here in the last 24 hours inland, and off here across the southern end of the Cascadia. We'll keep an eye on it. Stay safe. Have a good weekend, folks. We'll catch you guys back out here tonight, unless something major changes out here. Have a good one.